The following broadcast is a presentation of Mount Zion Media Ministry.
That some of us learned as a part of church growing up. You said it in church, and for some of us who had some real old school parents, when you were having dinner at the house, you said the blessing, and then you went around the table and everybody had to say a Bible verse. And how many of you know you couldn't say Jesus wept? You had to have a real one, and so one that many of us learned is this one, John 3:16. And the reading is from the King James Version. For God so loved the world that he what? That he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. Amen. You may be seated. And later on, we'll look at 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 4. Following this theme of Black History Month and following what I preached on last Sunday in terms of the idea that we are not cursed but blessed, I want to preach this morning from the subject, how to empower a generation. How to empower a generation. And the generation I'm talking about is the generation of young people like those sitting in front of me. I want to say to Mount Zion something that you already know and something that you demonstrate at a high level. And that is that God has called us to reach the world for him. And in reaching the world, it's not just one generation. We don't do church or ministry for one generation, particularly that older generation. Because one of the traps that churches fall in is doing church for the old people, neglecting the generations that are coming behind us. And reaching the world for him means that we invest time, talent, and treasure into the lives of young folk. And again, I want to begin this sermon by commending you, Mount Zion, because you do that at a level, and I don't say this in any kind of bragging way, but you do this at a level that other people talk about doing. For example, you, Mount Zion, the people of Mount Zion, you're investing your time, your talent, and your treasure in young people because of partnerships that we have in place with our school systems. And I say systems because I'm not just talking about the Dougherty County system, but systems in this region as well as private schools. We are present, giving time, talent, and treasure to invest in children, making sure that they have the tools they need to be the very best that they can possibly be. And then ministry through this church. Scouting, for example, been one of the leaders in scouting, having one of the strongest scouting programs, girls and boys, in this region for a long time. At one point, setting the record for making more Eagle Scouts than any, not just black church, but any scouting program in this region. In our mentoring programs and for boys and girls and the tutorial programs, the summer enrichment programs in the summertime where we try to catch children up who've fallen behind. And then internally, again, how we make opportunities available for children to grow. Somebody asked me, what's your youth Sunday? Every Sunday. Every Sunday there is an intentionality to assimilate them into the worship service. And you may discount it, but what you saw in these wonderful children who came up here and gave these presentations is preparation for the future. It is equipping them and empowering them with confidence and character and developing the skills that they have to stand before you and to give those presentations they gave. It takes something to do that. Those of you that sit out there, let me tell you something. This is an intimidating place. I stand here every Sunday, and I'm intimidated. And to come up here and have to step up on a step and speak to y'all with such clarity and such power and conviction, that's empowering for them. Taking up offering and praying and dancing, all of that is intentionally. It's our investment. And let me just say this parenthetically. I learned something today. I thought Meghan Markle was the first queen of color. But I learned today that there was a queen before her. See, it's good to come to Mount Zion. You learn stuff that you won't pick up everywhere else. So I just appreciate these children. I bet you won't ever look at sugar the same. Bet you won't ever look at football the same. So here we go. Let me get back to the message of today. And so when you look around Mount Zion, when you look around the city, the region, we have much to appreciate in our children. But here is where I stand, and here's where I believe God is. We cannot be satisfied if ours are doing well and are being empowered, but there's another part of their generation that's being left behind. You may not know their names. You may not know their faces. You may pass them riding on the streets. You may see them on the 6 o'clock news because they've gotten in trouble. You may hear teachers talking about them as they lament how these children today, they ain't like they used to be. We cannot be content as long as there are children out there who are not being adequately prepared for the future. Because listen, and I'm not just talking about black kids, I'm talking about children, period. We as a nation can never be as strong as we should be as long as there is people who are being left behind, people who are being marginalized, people who are being forgotten because they have issues. I shared with the 11 o'clock service, the 8 o'clock service, that new Lexus, well, it ain't as new as it used to be, but that other Lexus that is at my house, it has, the model is LS 500. What that 500 means is that bad boy got 500 horses. And when I tell you it will go from 0 to 60 in less than 4 seconds, and when I tell you, and children don't try this. And when I tell you, when I bought it, they told me about how fast it would go. So one day I was on a back road. I decided just to see what it would do. And when I tell you it would do everything they promised it would do. It got twin cams and that bad boy opened up and whoo. That's a sweet sound to me. And they got all these gadgets. But I got an email that told me that the run flat tires that are on it, that there had been some in that model that were defected, and while people were riding down the road, tires that are not supposed to go flat went flat. And people had accidents. And so from that point on, I got all that power, I got all that luxury, but I'm scared to put the pedal to the metal because I'm thinking, what if the tire blow out? And I was preaching revival in Augusta. I made my way to the Lexus dealer, had them to put me some new tires on it because I could never get all I wanted to get out of it as long as those 4 tires were not working. I'm not calling people cars, but I'm saying that no matter how much power we got, it may be something as 4 defective tires, or 4 families, or 4 people, or 4 communities, or 4, as long as there's somebody, we will never be all we're supposed to be. Let me say this to you, you got to know it. Everybody don't feel like this. There are some people who believe that there are some people who are supposed to be left behind, otherwise they can't enjoy what they are enjoying. And so what I want to say to you today as a church, that why don't we? I'm not asking you to go get all of Albany, all the churches. I'm just saying we who make up Albany make a decision that we're going to do more to empower this generation. That we're going, in spite of all that we're already doing, make a commitment to do more. And this is where I think we need the more. That we can do some more. And that is in this lesson that John 3:16 teaches us. God had a lost world. God had people who were created in his image, but were not empowered to live the life that he destined them to live. That's why when Jesus came, he said, I have come that you might have life and have it more abundantly. If the people were living the kind of life that God created them to live, Jesus never would have come and said that. But because they were not, God had to fix it so that we could be in right relationship with him and we could be empowered to live the kind of life that God wanted us to live. And so the Bible says, for God so loved the world that he decided to do something. He gave his only begotten son. Listen, prior to sending his son, God had sent the law through Moses and other means to try to get people on the right track. But God knew from the beginning that all of that was temporary and ultimately his son was coming. And we don't need to skip that, because here is what we got to understand. Laws will never empower a people to live their maximum life. Laws serve a purpose, but you can't legislate empowerment. Think about it. It's African American History Month. People marched and died to get laws changed. And so a civil rights law was passed. Did empowerment follow the signing of that law? No. The Voting Rights Act was passed. Were people empowered to vote? No. The law provided the opportunity, but it couldn't empower them. And that's why today in Dougherty County, over half of the folk who are registered and can go, they don't vote. The law gives them the right, but there's no empowerment. There's nothing that says I ought to vote. On paper, you ought to have every economic opportunity that everybody else has. On paper. But the reality is you've not been empowered to have it. America is a place of opportunity, as we say it, and the world is, because we live in this global economy. But if I'm not prepared for it, who's going to help me? And so listen, follow this now. John 3:16. God, who has everything at his disposal. He can pick anything and anybody. He got money. He can throw some money at it. He got some rules. He can throw some rules at it. He got houses. He can give them some houses. He got cars. He can give them cars. God can give anything that he wants. And out of everything at his disposal, he gives his son. But here's what you've got to see. His motive for giving his son is that he loves the world. What if God touched our hearts, we ask him to, and our motive for serving others, for empowering this next generation becomes simply this, that we love them. And don't give me this religious response that you already love everybody, because you don't. That's one lie you don't have to give an account of. Because love is demonstrated in his actions. God's motive was love, but his act was to send his son. He gave. And look what he gave. He gave himself. Because his son is an extension of himself. He gave himself first. And the motive was love. And then his son's mission to come to save the world was to bring God among us. And his name shall be called Emmanuel, which means God's among us. And the son's mission was to come among us as God and demonstrate to us the love of God. The goal is to save, and the method is through love. And listen, he had to be Emmanuel, God with us, because as one of my friends that I never met, Howard Thurman, and friends that I never met refers to people that I've never met, but through their reading and through their writing, I read and I learn from them. And so what Howard Thurman says, you can never impact a person totally until you are among them. You gotta be with them. It's hard to love you from a distance. It's one level of love to send money to Martin Luther King Elementary School to buy some supplies. But it's another level of love when I am among them. And I'm among them to show love. And so Jesus comes, Emmanuel, God with us, and he demonstrates love as he comes into contact with people. And it's in his love that he empowers them. He says, come, follow me, and I will make you to become fishers of men. He invites people to come follow him. And let me show you what happens. Because in addition to academics, in addition to recreation, these girls and all the boys in here, they all have a need that can only be met by love. See, so for example, it starts with this idea of belonging. I need to belong to somebody. And I don't just need to belong to you on a piece of paper, but I need to belong to you in such a way that you come in my presence and you spend time with me, creating moments and memories, and in the process of loving me, you empower me with the sense that I belong to somebody. And once I am empowered with the idea of belonging, it helps me to understand who I be. I will never understand who I am unless I know who I belong to. My mama had me laughing the other day. She was telling me that she didn't know I was coming to town. And she saw me walking down the streets. She was riding by. And she said, when she saw me from behind, she said, I don't know who that is right there, but that's one of my husband's children. Y'all stop, let me see who he is. Because she said I walk like my dad. And that's the short enough truth. But let me tell you something, and I mean this from the depths of my heart. My sense of who I am is tied to the fact that it was ingrained in me as a child that I belong to him. Listen, sometimes preachers engage in hyperbole, but I want you to know that means you exaggerate, but I'm not exaggerating now. I'd rather you cut both my arms off at this point in my life than for me to discover that Perry Simmons is not my daddy. Because if I discover now that Perry Simmons is not my daddy, my whole world is turned upside down because I no longer know who I am. I got to spend the rest of my life now trying to find out who I am. And so you messed me up. But when I know who I belong to, then it helps me to be who I be. And you see, and when I know who I belong to and I know who I be, then I'm empowered to become. I can become somebody. Listen. And so in the process now, I'm empowered. And so I don't have to hang out with the bad crowd to feel significant, because love has already taught me and put in me a sense of significance. Y'all might not want to be with me, but I know somebody who loves me unconditionally, and I belong to them. I know who I be. I don't have to be with you. I don't need to be in your club. Some of y'all just selling out to be in a fraternity, to be in a sorority. For what? There ain't nothing. I said it. They can't add to you what you ain't got. If you ain't nothing now, you ain't gonna be nothing when you join. Spending all your money, you better buy some groceries, pay your bills. Listen. And then we be hypocrites. We condemn young boys and young girls for joining gangs because they want to belong. And that's what we do. Yeah. They doing what we do. We just sanctified ours with a little education and some good service. They get beat in, you get beat in. Violence is violence. Just because the person on the stick that's beating you is educated, don't mean it ain't violence. But when I'm whole, I'm going to be a mother one day. Maybe. So if I decide that, who's going to empower me to be a good mother? I want to be in school, and sometimes there's challenges. How am I empowered to go in and face those challenges in spite of what's in front of me, because I have some confidence in myself and there's character in me? I can do that because I've been loved. And the love helps me. And let me tell you something. My generation and the generation behind me, we got a little confused. We got confused. When I grew up, as the song say, I come from a poor family. Didn't have much. And so my determination was, my children gonna have it better than me. I ate mayonnaise sandwich, but I was gonna make sure they didn't have to eat mayonnaise sandwiches. I didn't have shoes. My brother and I used to swap out clothes. We were about the same size. He wear them one day, I wear them the next day. I was gonna make sure. I've been working since I was 6 years old in the tobacco field. I've done every kind of work imaginable in your mind. My children ain't gonna work like that. I ate what my mama put on the table. What y'all want to eat tonight? Messed them up. Because giving them stuff and freedom without responsibility and accountability does not make for empowering a generation. For God so loved the world that he gave. Slide over for me, brothers. See, long when the memories of the toys are gone, when them new Jordans don't hold the attraction they used to hold. And they grow older and come to realize what's most important. When they sit around and tell stories, it ain't going to be about them new shoes and that new game. They're going to be about me and daddy, me and mama, me and the church folk, it's going to be about that experience, that moment when we were together. And I remember how they made me feel. So what am I saying to you? I'm saying we, starting with the people in our houses. And then if I'm a real saint, I've got to go outside of my house. But let me go back to the house. Your house may not just be your address. There are a lot of things I thank my daddy for, and I thought he was crazy when I was growing up, but I know better now. But here's one thing I thank my daddy for. If you had a child, you were going to have to be in that child's life. All the girl had to do was call the house and say, Reverend Simmons, that Boone baby, boy, you go over there. I said, Daddy, let me check first, see if it's mine. Well, you check, but until you check, and listen, even if it ain't under your address, they still need you. And if you married to somebody who won't let you do what you need to do with them that ain't under your roof, you might ought to write them a note. I say, dear sweetheart, or dear husband, whichever it is, I need you to know I have an obligation that is stronger than my obligation to you. My first obligation is to take care of my own. The Bible says the man who does not take care of his own is worse than an infidel, and an infidel is going to hell. And I ain't going to hell trying to please you. Got to find ways to love them. So start at home, but then we as a church, we just start loving them. And I'm getting ready to go to 1 Corinthians chapter 13. But I want to say this, and I'm not trying to make you feel bad, but I just have to do things to shock you into reality. You say you already love the children, but part of the evidence you don't is you got children around you in this church, you don't even know who they are. Because in your coming and going, you never take the time to get to know them. You see them, you say they ought to come to Sunday school. Why? You don't even talk to them. Why? See, how you gonna go to the parent and say, you ought to do this, you ought to do that, when you don't even talk to the parent?
Thanks for watching. Be blessed and continue walking in the light.